Welcome to IT Study Park. This is SVK. Yes. And last class in Spring Boot MVC, last class we have discussed what is the need and the Spring frame, like any framework. And if suppose if you develop a Spring MVC2 architecture manually by using a Spring, by using Servlet or JSP, then we have to take care about all these things. These six many things or a number of things are there. So takes care about manually. Okay, so developer so takes care about all these things like developing the logic, navigation logic, view management, data management, and some MVC2 rules and regulations are there. So this is all these things. So take care about the developer. So overcome these problems. So some people introduce framework. So their framework provide the MVC architecture like structs, web work, and JSF, Spring MVC and Spring MVC. Okay, Spring Boot MVC. So in the advantage of developing MVC2 architecture-based web app using web application framework. So these many advantages are there, like given given predefined controller subnet that we need not to write controller logic manually. So now Spring framework given already predefined given controller servlet. So not required to developer implement should implement controller class. So it's an automatically maximum 2 MVC2 rules. It automatically implement all MVC2 rules, MVC2 architecture rules. So what is the rules are there? What is the rules are there? Last class we have discussed. These rules automatically injected inside the Spring framework, Spring MVC framework. So now the predefined controller servlet can trap all the requests to apply common system services like logging, auditing, and security, etc. Okay. Number fourth is the predefined controller servlet will give in based on the front controller design pattern. So now predefined controller is the front controller design pattern. One of the design pattern is there inside the design pattern course. What is the front controller? So on the basis of front controller design pattern, the give the front controller servlet. Front controller server self takes care about the navigation management, view management, data management. Okay. And it's remove lots of boilerplate code. In structs, controller servlet called action servlet. Okay. In JSF called faces servlet. In Spring simple dispatcher servlet. Okay. Now my question is rise. One question may rise. What is the question? What is the question may rise? So now question may rise. This one is the question like what is the question? Like what is the difference between architecture and design pattern? Suppose architecture is the yellow box, yellow circle, and design pattern is this. Inside the architecture, many more design pattern is existed. Okay, like suppose we have MVC2 architecture. Inside the MVC2 architecture, controller layer is there, view layer, model layer, and your controller layer exists the front controller, intercepting filters, like these many design patterns, and view layer, view helper, composite view. These design patterns are there, and model layer. Model layer inside the model layer, service delegate, like interact with the database. These many like business delegate, all these things are design pattern are there inside the architecture. Okay, that's why MVC2 is the architecture. Now, question is what is front controller? What is front controller is nothing but this is the special component of the servlet. This is the special component of the servlet. So this traps all the all requests or multiple requests to apply common system services. Common system services in the sense like security auditing, I said to you already. So you have got that clarity about these all topics, guys. So takes care about navigation management and view management and model management systems. Model management called front controller. So simple, this is the navigation management to decide the flow of among the component. Navigation management, like which requests come and which appropriate component are there to send the request. This means the navigation management. And view management is decide the which component or service classes or handler classes results should go which view component. It's decide. Okay, model and data management talks about how to store input value form data and how to pause the generated result to the various component. So now I'm giving one more definition about the controller, what is the front controller. So today's session, so this is the last session, guys. So now today's session is session 3. Session 03. And color want red and size. Okay. 26 is good. Set in the center. This is the session 3. Okay. Now session 3. Okay. So now in the session 3, the now first topic is our. I am giving one more definition about the controller, like front controller. So now front controller. I want to change the size. 18 is good. Okay. Front controller. Front controller. Front controller is another point. This is the entry point of the application. This is the entry point. Now, I want to change the color. Okay. This is the special component. No doubt. The special component of web application that acts as what is that entry? What is that entry and exit exit point exit point for all requirement. Exit point of the all requests. Okay, request or for multiple or for multiple requests. Request is called front controller. Front controller. Generally we take servlet component as a front controller. Generally. So write down along with me notes. If you want notes, then write down along with me, guys. So generally we take servlet components as front controller. Okay, front controller. So we can what is that? So we can call it as front controller. Front controller servlet. What is the meaning? The servlet, the special component of the web application that acts as the entry and exit point of the requests. Whenever you give the request, then this is the entry point. Front controller is nothing but like security guard. Okay, security guard, and security guard will check your authentication, authorization, all these things. That will check. Okay, and at the time of exit, then guard responsibility is there to check your like checking purpose. You're checking. Okay. So now this is the front controller, total front controller. So now next is front controller. Front controller traps the next is okay. Next is front controller. Front controller traps the request request traps the request applies system services apply the system services and delegate the request and then delegates the request to where handler handler classes delegate the request where handler classes. Front controller traps the request and apply the system services, then delegate the request to where handler classes for which for request processing. What is that? For which purpose? For the request processing. Takes this takes result and takes result from handler classes takes result from handler classes result to view components for formatting. Which purpose? For formatting the result formatting the formatting the formatting the result formatting the result. Which purpose? Formatting the result and send the result to browser as the response. This is the total work of the front controller. Sends the no, sends the result which to send the results to browser window or client browser browser window as a response. This is the total about front controller, guys. So now front controller, how front controller traps the request. So now this is the very question. How the front controller take the request. So now, right? By using slash URL patterns. Okay. To make front controller trapping and taking either all request either all request or multiple request all request or multiple requests we need to configure or map them with which with the slash URL pattern I will give you which URL pattern the support URL pattern or extension match or directory match URL pattern. Extension match or directory match. Directory match. This supports two URL pattern extension. First is the extension directory. Second is the directory. So now write it extension. Extension. Extension sorry extension match extension match or directory match. Extension match, not extension is good. Extension match or directory match. 1 point. Extension match or directory match. Directory match, extension match or directory match URL pattern. URL pattern to trap. What is that? To trap multiple requests. Trap multiple requests. That's it. Now here the point is node point is there. Note is about the slash URL. Slash URL take all the requests. Slash URL pattern to trap all the requests. All the requests. So I'm preparing a background for you guys. This is the total internal. Next session is the very important, like how to Spring Boot register the servlet. Register the dispatcher servlet. Next session we will learn. Okay. So now here is one question is raised. One question is there in my mind. What is the question? What is the difference between fund controller and handler classes? What is the difference between fund controller and handler classes? What is the difference between fund controller and handler classes? So now here I am writing some point. What is the difference between now? Question is what is difference between fund controller FC fund controller and handler classes, or you can call action classes of controller classes. Okay. So now this is the question, guys. Okay. So now here in the first point is what is that? Now about the front controller, front controller is web component. Front controller is web component. It generally servlet. It generally servlet component or servlet filter component. Servlet filter servlet filter the component. That's it. So now in controller or controller class or handler class is Java class maybe Spring Bean in a Spring MVC app, Spring MVC application. Now point is two. Second point is the front controllers traps either all request or multiple request and applies the system services, common system services. So now front controller FC front controller traps the all request or multiple request and applies what is that? Applies common system services. Now, in controller or handler classes and controller or handler classes either either directly either directly contains request processing request processing logic or contains or contains contains logic to delegate request to the service class, or contains logic contains logic to delegate request it means to send the request to the service. Delegate request to service class service class. Okay, now this is about the controller. Either it controller is simple, either takes the directly request processing logic. Okay, directly takes processing logic inside the controller classes or handle classes. Otherwise, it contains the service logic to delegate the request to the service logic, delegate the request to the service layer. Okay. So now third point about the controller. Third point about the controller. Front controller generally manage servlet container of the web application. What is the front controller? Generally managed by servlet container of the web application. Now here controller, write it controller, and next is controller managed by the all the requests, all these things by the JVM of web server, to manage controller or handler classes, and handler classes managed by what is that? Managed by JVM, of web server. Managed by which web server? In this is the normal application. In normal web application, managed by the JVM. Okay, in normal web application. In suppose in framework level, it's managed by the, suppose in Spring MVC, it's managed by the IOC container. Inversion of control, managed by IOC container, container of Spring Which application? In Spring MVC application. We are in Spring MVC application. That's it. So now this is the second point, guys. So controller classes managed by the normal application, like, okay, normal application managed by the JVM of web server. Okay, but in the Spring framework, it's managed by the IOC container. But in front controller, it's managed by the servlet container. But front controller is managed by the servlet container. That's it. Now fourth point is, write it. Fourth point is get request or response object that create and give by the servlet container. The front controller, write it. The front controller, you will get clarity. The front controller gets the request comma response objects that created and given by convert container. Convert container. Okay, that's it. Now, in controller classes, controller or handler classes gets the request, comma response that are passed by front controller, that are passed by which component front controller, which requests controller or handler classes holds, which requests sent by or passed by the front controller. I hope you got clarity. Now fifth point is the front controller, the main method contains logic or servlet lifecycle method or servlet lifecycle. Okay. In front controller main method, the front controller in main method containing logics are servlet life cycle methods. Okay. Now, in front controller, like controller or handler classes, methods that contains the business logic or delegation logic are called handler methods. So we will learn many more things in the flexible mode. How to handle method declared. Okay. Okay. So now the sixth point is what is that? Front controller, it is one per entire MVC web application. But in the same here, but not in the controller. In controller point of view, in controller or handler classes, one per entire module. Different modules are there. Okay. So now write it, guys, these points. So this is the very important point. Write it, write it. After that, I will give the flow. Controller plus and and controller. Okay. All the flow I will give. Okay. And also explanation I will give you. Okay, and this is the flow. This is that. Okay. Last class we have discussed the flow. Okay, one flow is there. One flow is there. So today's session is required. So flow I will discuss. I hope you write down all these things. So go further. So this is the flow. This is the flow of. This is the flow about. I am going to discuss flow. One flow is there. Flow is what is the flow? Flow is like MVC2 architecture with the front controller design pattern. Okay. So now flow is now MVC2 architecture plus with front controller. So we get clear cut clarity about this topic. Design. We will get more clarity about this topic after this explanation, guys. Okay. So now, yeah, I'm drawing some points. Here is this one is our browser window. Okay, this one is our browser window. Here is this is our nothing but what is that? This is our front controller. Suppose this is our front controller. Okay, and this is our model component. This is our model component. This is our model component. Okay. Now this is our view component. This is our view component. Okay. Here is this is front controller, and this one is I'm writing parallelly. This is the browser window. This is client window. You can so simply you can say browser. Okay. Browser. That's it. This is our front controller like FC. Okay. Front controller. This is our the controller or handler classes. Controller or handler classes. Okay. Now this is our viewpoint, view component. Okay. This is also component. This is our view component. And here one more thing is remaining. What is that? What is that, guys? This one. This one is our very important point. This one is okay. This one is our model component. This is our model component. Okay. And model component having some DO point. Model component classes like DO classes are there. Some DO classes, data access object, DO, DA classes. classes. Model component delegate the request to the DO, and DO is the responsible to interact with the database. DO responsibility to interact with, it's a DO responsibility to interact with the database. Okay. So now, okay, now this is database software, database software. Sorry. This is our database software, and this one is which one is 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Okay, wait a minute, wait. Just I want to drag some. Okay. This up to this is our. Okay. Okay. Now good. Now this part is our MVC2 architecture. MVC2 architecture based application. This one is our MVC2 architecture. This one is our MVC2 architecture. What is that? This one is our MVC2 architecture, guys. This one is our MVC2 architecture. This one is MVC2 architecture. Architecture based web application. Okay. So now I'll give a point by point. This is our front controller. Front controller is also called as the controller part. I want to change the color. This one. This one is the good color. Okay. Here it straps the request. Here it straps the request by using like extension match. By using extension match, by using, suppose here is one thing, do sorry, start.ds. Start.ds is the request is there, URL patterns is there. So now this is nothing but URL pattern. By using this URL pattern, by using this URL pattern, it takes the request, from where? It takes the request from the browser window. So now it's trap the request and trap the request and process the request, all this thing. So now suppose, okay, a browser give the request, like send the request to where? Front controller. The front controller traps the request and process the request. And this one is trap the request and process the request. Okay. Process the request. After this, it sends to the appropriate, after processing the request, it sends to appropriate handler of controller classes. Now it sends to, now delegate, I can also call this one is also delegate. Now it sends to the where? Controller or handler classes. Now after this, here it's the after processing like validation logic, like performing some logic. Suppose here has some like validation logic or anything like validation logic. Here validation logic are there. Here inside this validation logic and some other logics are there. It's your choice. And processing this logic, after processing this logic, then controller like cursor like request delegate to the model component. Now request delegate to where? Model component. Okay. Then model component is nothing but having some business logic or service class. Business logic. The model component having nothing but what is the business logic? Business logic. Suppose business logic in the sense, suppose here is it have to interact with the database, to interact with the database. So now, so model component delegate the sends the other point, like sends to pass the request to DO classes to interact with the DO. So now this is our next. Now DO responsibility is processing the request like persistence logic. This is the DO is out of the audio classes, DO module. This is the other module. Okay, DO classes, and this is the other module. In this, in this, in this point, having some like persistence logic to perform like inserts the data and delete the data, update the data kind of thing are there. So here, persistence logic first. Persistence logic is there. So after performing this logic, okay. Now performing this logic, then request, then this persistence logic, processing the persistence logic and interact with the database software. Then simple, some data is collected from the database, then result, database sends back to the result where DO classes, where DO classes. DO module like data module, module one. Then this module sends the back, pass back to the model component, and the model component pass back, return back to the where handler component. Then handler component pass the result pass the result to where? Pass the result to where? Front controller. Front controller. Pass the result to where? To front controller. Then front controller identify the result and send back to the appropriate view component for that. For which purpose? To preparing what is that? To prepare view format. To prepare view format. So now this one. Okay. Now front controller sends the result, send the result to appropriate view component. Then after preparing the view component after preparing result as the view format, then view component view component sends the result to send the result to send the result to front controller back. Then front controller, then again front controller sends the result as a response to the browser window. So this is the total process is going on in MVC2 architecture with the database and also one module called DO module. This is the another module, but this is the MVC2 architecture, total MVC2. Here is the separation of the front controller is different and controller part is this different and model part is different and view component. Model part is model responsibility to interact to the database. Okay. View component directly it does not interact with the model component. Okay, this is the distinction and rules. And last class we have discussed this rule. Okay. So now I'm writing some point. I'm going to write some points so we'll get clarity. So point wise, I will take which color? Oh, blue is good. Okay. So now this is the request first. request first, and here taking the request to front controller and process the request is 2. Process the request is 2. 3 is send to the appropriate controller. Then fourth is process the request in the front controller performing the logic, and fifth point is sends to the appropriate after performing this logic. Fifth point is after performing this, fourth point here is not a fifth point, guys. Okay, 1 minute. There is so okay. So now this is not fourth point here. This is processing. Then third is this. Then after this, after performing this, then send back to the model component. Then perform the delegate operation to delegate the request to the appropriate model component. So fourth one is here. Fourth one is here, guys. So if you are facing any problem, any doubt, just comment. I will give you answer. Personally, I will give you answer. Don't worry. And you have my mail. Just mail me. I will give you answer to on mail. Okay. My mail is Java by SVK. Okay. So now here, fourth point is this. So now after this, after the performing, then delegate the request inside the DO. If any DO interaction with any DO related logics are there, then interact with the DO, then interact with the DO. After this, interact with the data. This is the total sixth. This is the total sixth. Interact with the database and send the result to the DO class, and DO class send the result to model component, and model component send back, return back to the result to the handler class, to controller classes, then controller classes send back to the result, to front controller. And then front controller again find the appropriate view component, appropriate view component for the formatting the result. So send the request to the result to the view component, then view component prepare the view format, then send back to the front controller. 12 steps is there. So now 13 steps. In the 13 steps is after that, 13 step, this is the response. 13 steps. In 13 steps, this one sends the all formatted result as a response to the browser window. This is all about MVC2 architecture with front controller design. Okay. So now I'm writing some point. I'm going to writing some point, so we'll get more clarity. Okay. So first of all, I am going to tell you what is extension and directory match. So here, who is the responsible to make front controller to pass the request and all this. Okay. So now here, yes. So to make front controller servlet trapping the multiple request take the support of extension match or directory match URL pattern okay. So now write it example, suppose example, instead of example, in the directory match star.ds is nothing but is that extension match star dot like ITSP, provide the ITSP. Okay. Now next is suppose star dot HTM, star.htm. In Spring MVC, I said to you star.htm. Okay. I have teached already in the Spring MVC batch. Spring MVC batch. Okay. So now, suppose star dot all these things are etc. This is the nothing but extension match. This is extension match URL pattern. This is extension match URL pattern. URL pattern. This is the extension match URL pattern. Now here directory match URL pattern. Directory match URL pattern. Suppose slash a slash b slash dot star comma slash abc slash aby. This one is nothing but a slash star, and also like comma slash it sp slash star. This is the directory match. This is nothing but this is nothing but directory match URL pattern. Directory match URL pattern. Okay. So I hope you get clarity to make front controller tracking down multiple requests. These many requests are there. Okay. So here is the extension match are there. Then front controller is going to trap the request or like multiple requests or the single request. Okay. Okay, guys. So next I am going to explain this point, this diagram. I'm going to explain this diagram. So now explain. Explain this diagram. Okay, explain this diagram. So now here, in first point, browser gives request to the front controller. Okay. Now second is front controller servlet FCR, right? Front controller servlet wraps the request and applies the common system services here. In this point here this one is applies this common system services and the front controller. Okay. Third steps is front controller servlet delegate, or you can say send the request to appropriate handler or controller classes. So now front controller servlet delegate the request to, in the technical term, delegate. Okay. Delegate the request to appropriate in the sense like exact max, no? appropriate handler or controller classes. appropriate controller classes. Now, fourth point is fourth and fifth point. Fourth and fifth point are fourth, fifth, and sixth point. I am writing parallelly, so we'll get clarity. Otherwise, I'm writing parallelly. Okay. So now fourth, fifth, and sixth point. Six steps. Well, six steps. Okay. So now here, guys, observe. Very important, very important. Put more concentrate last 10 to 15 minutes, guys. Okay. Then we will leave the sessions. Okay. So this is the important in interview point of view. Spring MVC, this is the internal. All these things I am preparing internals. Okay. For you guys, only for you. The handler class use service DO, use service DO or and database software. What is the database software? To process the request by using what is that? By using which one? Business logic and persistence persistence logic. Now here, now same point in the seventh and eighth steps. What is the seventh and eighth steps are then, guys? So here, observe the seventh and eighth steps. Seventh and eighth steps. The handler class, this is the handler class, use the service, handler class, get the result of business logic execution from the service or DO classes. So now 8th and 7th steps. So now from where we get the result, like model class, like business logic and persistence class objectives. So now here write it. So now write it. Okay. Handler class use not a use. Handler class gets result of business logic execution from which? From service or DO class. Sorry, DO classes. This is our 8th and now 8th and after that our ninth steps is important point. Ninth steps is what is that? Handler class keeps the result. Keeps the result in request scope. Where? In request scope. By using the request scope to prepare the view component. Okay, we prepare the view component or prepare the view result. Okay, view part. So now write it. Handler class keeps. Now 9th point is handler class keeps the result in request scope. Request and pass keep the result in the request scope. Okay, and pass the controller to front controller server. Suppose this point is here. I'm diagrammatically I'm showing. This is suppose this is our result. So front controller in the 9 points, this will keep as the request scope. This is the request scope. Result dot request dot result keeps as the request scope. This is the request scope. This is the request scope, and here keeps the result. Then after that, this sends to the front controller. Send to the front controller. Okay. Ninth, after the nine, the tenth point is front controller sends front controller delegate appropriate view component. Delegate or send to the. Okay. So now tenth point is okay. Tenth point is guys. Tenth point is front controller servlet delegate 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 to the appropriate view component. Appropriate to the view component. 11th point is in the 11th point. In 11th point, process the result and formatting the result. Huh? Here, view component reads the result. To block request scope and format the result. That's it. And now last point is what is that? Last point is 12th and 13th. Last point is 12th and 13th. 12 and 13. 12 and 13. 12 and 13. 12 and 13 point is formatted result. Result goes to browser as a response through front controller servlet component. Okay. So now this is our total agenda. This is our total model MVC2 architecture with front controller. So this is the diagram explanation of there. Okay, this is our diagram. Okay, I hope you prepare these notes. So in a YouTube, just post the video, write the note. All these things facilities are there in a YouTube. So don't worry about the notes. Okay, once I have a time. When I will free, then I will upload all the notes on my Telegram channel. Don't worry, guys. I'm right now I'm busy somewhere. That's why I'm taking a session. That's it. Okay, my team will upload all these things. Okay, so this is the total part. Guys. So today's session is I'm going to wind up the today's session. Okay, so if you have any doubt, send me on my mail. My mail is java SVK@gmail.com. Okay. Okay, I will give an answer on the mail also. Use mail. Mail is good. Okay. So next session we will learn more things. Okay, guys. Next session we will learn more things. So thank you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are doing well, guys. Well, I hope you are understanding this point. Okay. If you are not comfortable with this, then just comment on my comment box. I will give a suggestion to you what to do next. Okay. This is the Spring MVC. If you want to learn this course, then you should aware about all this basics, Spring basic. You should aware about it. You should knowledge about the Spring MVC, Spring basics, like Spring core. You must have a Spring core knowledge. Then this sessions is helpful for you. If you don't know the Spring core, then you don't watch the video. Just skip the video and just enjoy yourself, guys. When I will launch the Spring Core as soon as possible. When I got any free slot in timing, then I will launch. Okay. When I'm unable to take in section advanced Java, guys. Okay. Why? Because I'm taking like 3 sessions parallelly. Oracle, Spring MVC, and Spring Boot MVC. Okay, that's why. And I have some office work already. I have some office work. After the office work, I will take the sessions. Okay, so don't worry. Just be with me. I will teach you all the things. Okay, just subscribe. I take study part. That's it. Here is all. All these things are free. This is my intention, guys. Why? Because I am raising money somewhere else. It's not required, not related to money, guys. It's related to knowledge. That's it. So thank you for watching. We will meet next session. If you have any query, just comment.